All right, all you Gen X-ODUS listeners and watchers and viewers and fans of the Zeitgeist Film Festival, I am so freaking lucky to have Mr. Russell Boast here with us today. This guy is so busy that he was telling me everything he had to do, and I was getting a panic attack from all the stuff he had to do. Yet he took the time to come over here and do this podcast with me. So I cannot tell you again how awesome that is. And what I really like about Russell is that sometimes you meet somebody and just like right off the bat, you know how freaking awesome they are. And they say there's like a lot of crappy people in the industry and LA this and LA that. But you know what? I truly like Russell is one of those that is just awesome. So I would love for you to tell us before we go into your, Gen X experience, like what you do in the industry.
All right, so thank you for that beautiful introduction. I'm like on point. I am, well, first and foremost, I'm a dad. I have 2 kids, so I always start with that. I'm a dad. I have 2 boys, 5 and 7 years old. And then I'm a casting director. I work in the film industry as a casting director.
Do you cast mostly TV or film?
So I had a quite a good run in the network television world, and then found this wonderful place of independent filmmaking where I have a lot more of a creative say. So I do a crossover of both features and television work, but mainly at the moment I'm kind of embedded in the indie world, which is cool.
So now with all this new technology that we have, is this going to be a hindrance for you? Because weren't you saying you were like in Mexico and then the time change over here and this and that? And
it is. It's funny because it's like, semi-post COVID, it's a lot of bad came out of COVID and then a lot of good came out of COVID, and the bad in the industry is the self-tapes. And if you want to ask me about all of that, we can get into that. But self-taping, but the benefit for me was that I got to cast anywhere in the world. The only thing that my clients don't realize is that anywhere in the world means different time zones for me. So I was working on 2 pieces on the East Coast, one in New Mexico, one in New Zealand, and then went to Mexico in the middle of all of that to work on another project. And it was just insane.
Are you like a doctor at the old school pager? You're just on call 24/7. They're like, here's a self-tape, watch it now. Tell us, you were telling us how many self-tapes did you watch like in a week, remember?
Well, for the job that I just did now, no names mentioned because it's all NDA work, but I saw it was a national search for just 7 kids, and we had 10,000 submissions, just over 10,000 submissions just on those 7 roles, and then I accumulated over 700 self-tapes, watched every single one of those self-tapes almost from start to finish, and then presented 350 of those to the client. Yeah.
So this may be an industry insider. You may or may not be able to answer this, but for me as a film programmer, I have to watch, hundreds of films within a week. Within 20 seconds, I'm just like, nope, not doing it. And you said you watched them all the way through. Is there ever a time where you're like, in 4 seconds, you're like, nope, or do you have the luxury to do that, or you must watch them?
It really depends on the scenes, the scenes that have been given out, because if the scenes are good, I want to jump to that scene. So if there's 2 scenes and I'm having one of the 700 that I'm watching, if I know that the other scene is going to show the artist's ability better, then I'll jump to that scene. But as a rule, look, there's those tapes where I start playing and I'm like, no, and just stop playing, stop watching the tape. But I love actors and I love working with actors, and I'm always looking for that moment that if I was in the room and we weren't in COVID times on Zoom, then I would jump in and say to the actor, wait, let's go back and do that again. We just don't have the luxury of doing that now.
But live energy.
Mm-hmm, and because I'm old school, I still just want to watch through and just be like, is there a moment that makes this actor shine?
And that makes you, I think, set apart from the rest, is that you really truly care about what you do and you're not just phoning it in. And that's why I think, I relate to you so much. So obviously we have somebody here with an accent, somebody from South Africa. And the title of this episode is Gen X Experience in International Realms. We had somebody from Latvia. We'll have somebody from Estonia. I would really like to know about your experience in growing up, first of all, in the 1980s when you were young, and then on to the 90s. And, tell me about pop culture and being a Gen Xer in another country.
Well, it's funny because until you invited me onto the podcast, I was like, what am I? Like I hadn't really thought about what generation I slipped into. And I think that's a combination of moving home a lot, moving from a rural town into a big city to another big city to the States 17 years ago. And when you're a Gen Xer now, I'm going to label myself as such from here on out, when you're a Gen Xer and you do such dramatic life changes in your life, for a moment when I got to the States, parts of my life kind of fell away. That became what was happening right now became more important than the past, But now as I'm getting older and I have kids and I look back and go, God, we went through a bucket load of stuff. And not even like I thought today on my way here, we've been through a pandemic, like, okay, cool. But if we go all the way back, like I came from a rural farming town, in Africa, in South Africa.
Like what was the population? And
it was tiny. Like everyone knew everyone. There was one school, there was one gas station, there was one store, and that was it, really.
So did you watch stuff on TV and go, I'm going to get out of here one day and I'm going to go to the big city?
I didn't.
Did you have these dreams that you always see in these 80s films?
No, I had no idea. I think my dad was the one he was like, you have to move, you have to go places. And I was kind of like, oh, okay, cool as a kid. I never really thought about it, but I had family all over the world. So my grandparents were in the UK. And my dad challenged me when I was a young kid, and he said, if you can raise the money by the time you finish high school to go visit your grandparents, I'll double that money. And I thought about it, and I was like, okay. So I raised money like crazy that he didn't know about.
Are we allowed to say?
A number of different Gen X ways.
I love it, the Gen X ways.
Exactly.
Hustling, we'll just call it.
Yeah, I put away anything. It was whether it was pocket money, whether it was like car washing money, whatever. And I raised a substantial amount. I can't remember exactly how much it was, but I know that when we finally got to that moment where I said, oh, remember that one time you said, and he said, well, how much money did you raise? And he was like, well, can't double that,
He made the deal. She got it in writing.
He did. But that instilled in me the want to travel, the want to visit different places. And once I started to travel, even when I got into the business initially in South Africa, my job was to go location-based casting. So I was like going to Namibia or Mozambique or traveling the whole of Africa. The first thing that struck me as a youngster was how everything was the same, and how our needs and wants and desires and even moving into the film business, but just as human beings, they were all the same. It didn't matter where you were or what your financial background was, what your history was, what languages you grew up with, whether you grew up herding sheep on a farm and had never been to a big city before. The same challenges existed for everyone.
I totally, that's what I love about film so much. And when you watch an international film and you need to see World's Worst Person, is this guy's giving a speech, grown up in Oslo, Norway, and it really resonated with me, like word for word. And here's somebody from thousands of miles away having the same experience I did. And I really think that kind of human experience transcends, geography. And that's what I love about traveling too, is that the more you travel, you realize how much we are the same.
We're all the same, and it's just choosing the place where you want to land. Really is what it is. And it's when I came to the States, getting into this country and getting a green card and then getting a citizenship. It's not hard. It's not a piece of cake. It's hard. It's hard to do that.
It is.
But it's about making a decision. And wherever I was in the world, I was like, is this a place? And if this is the place, then I will make it work. Which I think speaks to us Gen Xers, because I think we all have the ability to do that.
That is so funny that you said that. Did you watch our first episode? Because we were defining what is Gen X in the first episode, and there have been studies done. The boomers are classified as this, millennials as this. Gen Xers were voted most adaptable and ready to take on new changes and evolve. Because if you think about it, and we were talking about this in the last episode, is the most technological change and demographic change and moving and all that happened within our generation, and we had to adapt. I mean, look, we had zero computers, nothing, and here we are now. Right. Digital, and we're not even that old, and we had to adapt pretty quickly. So,
and I mean, you think about and I don't know if it was the same for you, but and God bless my parents, but we could do anything we wanted. Like our parents were not hands-on parents. Like, and I don't think I think it may be true of all Gen Xers. They were not hands-on parents.
Yeah, we had the latchkey kids.
They were barely available. My mother, when I turned 13, she was like, "Here's the key. Good luck."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Key for what?" She's like, "The front door." And I'm like, "Cool. You are taking me to school today, right?" And she's like, like, yeah, maybe. I mean, it's just a mile,
Yeah,
you know.
pack your own lunch. Bye.
Yeah, and, like now I'm such a hands-on parent. You know, I look at my kids and I'm like, what am I doing? Like literally, like micromanaging them in a way that I.
Well, they're still young. Hopefully, by the time
Sure.
they're 13, you know, you got to give them a little.
You know,
space.
now with the technology of it all, we're gonna hit COVID, and I was one of those parents who was like, no
What are
cell
you looking at on the phone? Yeah.
No, I was like, you're not having a cell phone until you move into middle school. You're definitely not having an iPad until you like in the middle of middle school, and then COVID hits, and my son walks in the door and he's like, oh, they gave us iPads at school. I'm like, you're in the 2nd grade. What are you? And now Minecraft and everything, and he's a genius. Like he's so good with technology,
and so, you're a dunce.
So
we're like,
for a moment, you know, I'm like, well, I can take you back a couple of steps through all the technology we've been through, which I'm sure you've discussed on a previous podcast. But I'm like, dude, maybe I'm making a mistake, you know. And the first lesson, and this is all to do with Gen X's and our business and everything, is when my first son was born, we decided not to show him a television until he was 2. So we didn't put him in front of TV. We didn't show him cartoons.
Right.
No screens. I don't think it lasted until 2, but certainly till he was at least 1.5, 2. He had never seen a Disney princess. He had never seen anything. And then he started to mingle with other kids who were talking about Harry Potter, and he was like, huh? And then we decided to take him to Disneyland, and he didn't know any of the characters. Like, I'm like, that's goofy. And he's like, what is that weird dog? And I was like, whoa, maybe we've made a mistake. So when our second kid came along, 3 days in, he was like, and in front of the TV. And it's funny because they're 2 years apart, but Dominic has more language. He knows, he's into a little bit more pop culture. And CJ's just like a Gen Xer walking around being like, hey, I'm just going to play my guitar and be a DJ. You know?
He's 8 and he's
7.
He's 7 and he wants to be a DJ.
He's wanted to be a DJ since he was born. He came out and he was like, the first word out of his mouth, I think, was DJ before he could say his name, which is CJ. So CJ the DJ. That's him, man.
So how old is he going to be when he's allowed to go to his first rave?
You know, I don't know. And the thing
How
is,
old were you at your first rave?
The thing is,
I think I was
remember.
14 at mine.
I can't remember. I wasn't young because I did grow up like in a small rural town, so it wasn't like immediate. I think it was once I got to the bigger cities. But certainly I was in a club by the time I was 16, maybe, you know. And it's funny because that's kind of what we did, you know. And now with my kids, it's not about letting them go. I don't think they're going to want to. Like,
right? Or is it even there? Do they even have raves anymore?
I'm like,
I should ask.
Come on, we're at Chapman
I want to
University.
stay at home and play Minecraft. I don't want to go.
Yeah, I'm like, what is the club? You know, dancing with a bunch of people. Remember, we had that thing called a pandemic? We're not doing that anymore. I'm like, I don't know. Who knows what our kids are going to want to do?
Well, and I did want to segue into that. With this screen culture, are they going to have other, you know, social aspects that are stunted because they're not having that interaction minus the screens?
Yeah, it's funny because it's like, I watch particularly CJ, who loves the laptop and loves whatever, loves computers, and he loves tech. So like he would have come in tech. So he would have come in here, set up the cameras. He knows how to plug in the mic.
I should have
do all of that. You should have, right? And he's always had that knack of like that's his world. So he has that as an outlet, and he's a very social kid. And I think it's from watching us be social parents. I'm not sure, but he's super social, so I'm not worried about him getting stuck. He'll get stuck in Minecraft for an hour and then need to get out and then need to talk to people.
Well, that's good.
And you know, after the pandemic, I mean, he just loves his friends, and so he has that naturally. Whereas Dom's more he's not so forward facing, you know. And Dom's a little young, he's only just getting into the iPad and games and stuff. But I think about the kids who are not forward facing, who get stuck sitting at the dinner table on their phones, whatever it is, you know. Like I think back to my childhood, and we never sat at a dinner table, but all my friends did. So whenever I went to a friend's house, like they would sit and have dinner together as a family. And now I've put that into my family because I thought it was really cool. And my kids absolutely detest it. Like they would love to have the TV on while we're having dinner, and I'm like, that's not going to happen in my house, you know. But then I think back to my childhood, and that's exactly what we did. I mean, we used to sit with the food on our lap and watch the TV. That's how we had dinner, you know. So it's that all the way through to now I'm going out to other dinner parties with other people with older kids than mine, and the kids are just sitting there on their like phones, and I'm like.
Look, well, it's one thing if it's one TV and you're all watching the one thing, but if everybody's on their separate screen, That's a separate
I just-
experience.
I
And
don't-
here's another thing: are the kids deciding what to watch? Because when we were doing that when I was growing up, my parents decided. I didn't get to call. Like I had to watch whatever my parents were watching, and that was it.
No, it's funny. Yeah, I think because my parents watched a lot of movies, and so we'd go and get the big old Betamax machine out of the video store, or when the VHS like machine arrived, it was like only this
Yeah.
big, not this big, and it was like amazing, and you had to go through the video store, get the videos out, but we did that. It was like a ritual on the weekends. We watched movies all the time, and I think now.
What was your family favorite? What was the one that everybody agreed upon?
We didn't, because we all had different. Like my stepdad was into westerns, which my mom didn't like. It was so we all had our own one. It was mom liked some musicals, stepdad wouldn't watch. It was a huge cross section. There was no like family.
There was no one,
There was no
like-
we all love to watch like The Sound of Music, for example. There was none of that. It was,
Right.
but I think of the movies I was watching when I was younger than 10, because I remember my 10th birthday was a Thriller themed birthday. It was based on the movie, and I made all my friends come over, dress.
Thriller, Michael Jackson
Thriller. Remember the movie, right? And I made my friends come over. Everyone dressed up like Michael Jackson, and I remember it was the Big 10. And we watched Thriller, and but I think I don't know that I would watch my 7-year-old see Thriller now. Like we're watching Die Hard, and we watch
I watched American Werewolf in London, the transformation
we were like
scene.
9 or 10,
Yeah.
and now we're so PC. Like I'm like my kids are stuck.
You would not let your kids watch Thriller. Come on.
No, see, now I'm thinking about it. Now I'm thinking
I'm
about
kinda
it because
sad.
I showed them something recently where I was like, this, not Labyrinth, the other one.
Legend?
No.
The Never-Ending Story.
Jim Henson Muppet movie. It was the
Dark
first-
Crystal?
Yeah, the Dark Crystal. I was like,
The Skeksis are scary.
This is going to be
yeah.
super scary. I'm going to show my kids the Dark Crystal, and they were like,
Rolling their eyes at you.
yeah, I was like, what is this? Like, what? And then I was watching it. I loved that movie when I was a kid. Like, I had it on repeat. And then my kids are like, I can see the man's shoe. And I'm like, what man's shoe? This is beautiful puppetry. What are you talking about? It's just.
Are
such different worlds.
we going to have a whole new generation of just cynics? Because we had this awe and wonder. We're very forgiving, and now it seems like kids are just kind of like it's like takes a lot to impress them now because they've seen it all, done it all. It's all there on the internet.
I wonder. I mean, here's what I think having kids, young kids, is I think back to when we were carrying those Betamax machines, and we had no idea. Like I told CJ that I was coming on the show, and then I said to him, we saw cell phones coming. We didn't even we didn't have the internet. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have laptops. We didn't have computers. And then he was like, what? And then he said, did you have a TV? And I was like, well, and then he pointed to our massive flat screen, and I was like, well, it was like a box. He was like, what did you do? And I'm like,
and not even a remote
played
control.
with our
I was the
friends.
remote control. I had to
Yeah,
go
we
change
didn't even.
the channel.
We saw the birth of video games. And then I started to think about what we've been through, and I'm like, I don't know what to say about the next generation, about my kids, because who knows what's going to happen in their time. I certainly didn't expect to go through everything
records
we did.
to cassettes to CDs to streaming.
Come on, man. I mean, I thought I was a little singer when I was young, but I used to take like a cassette tape deck, and then I used to like record one like harmony of the song, and then I would play it back and have another tape, and then sing two parts, and then play and record. And then I'd flip the tape over, and then I could like sing a 6-part harmony all by myself.
You're so cool.
It took hours, friends. It was hours.
Do you still have any of those tapes?
No,
You've got to find them.
I wish I could do
I
that.
would hold up my cassette up to MTV so I could like get the song, and it would and then my mom would be like yelling in the background.
Okay.
So those were my
Get this, and I'm not a
recordings.
screenwriter at all. But my thing, as soon as I could write anything or even type, is I put the real old typewriter next to the video machine. I wanted to write out the scripts of all the movies that I was watching. No idea why. I had no concept of what script writing was or screenwriting.
So you did like closed captioning
So
for your
I would literally like if it was a scene that I really liked in a movie, then I would push play and then pause and then write that sentence out.
Rewind if you didn't get
and
it.
then rewind and then I like pages and I did it for hours.
I did that for lyrics for songs too. I would rewind and
That's
write
what I
it
was doing
down.
instead of playing Minecraft.
Now you go on internet and you type in lyrics to a song. When
Right.
I had to wait till it came on, record it, then rewind it, then listen to it 5 times. And I still have the very first cassette I bought. I still have it. It was my Debbie Gibson electric blue, and I still have it. And I look at it. I remember how happy I was when I finally got it.
I remember my not stepdad, who was like an uncle, gave me my first album was Blondie, and I remember being so excited about that album, and I couldn't have been more than like 6, 7.
Yeah.
You
You got Blondie at 6. You're so cool.
Little like this little. Well, here's the
Was
thing.
it a 45 or?
I knew you were going to ask me, and I can't remember. I just remember it was like a Mickey Mouse thing that had batteries in it that you put the albums on and then they played, and we dropped the whatever, you know. But it's so funny because, you know, you asked about traveling from different countries and moving to different places. Like when people go like, oh, you're from Africa, like what were you doing as a kid, or what did you watch? And what I was doing, I think, was a little different because I was out playing in the fields and I had a lot of outdoor time in rivers and in mud and, you know, being in a rural area. But when they say, what did you watch on TV? I'm like, The Cosby Show. I'm like, whoa. Like, Facts of Life. Whoa, you guys had Facts of Life in Africa? And I'm like, yeah, we were watching all of those shows.
I'm trying to get Lisa Welchel, and her guy is like really interested. So if I get her, I'll let you come meet her. But yeah. So did you have local, like, South African pop culture shows, or it was all import from America?
I think we had one channel when TV came out. I remember my grandfather carrying in the first black and white television. I remember coming into the house, and I can't imagine I was more than 4 years old. And I remember them setting it up and him fussing with the wiring and trying to get the antenna right.
Yeah.
It was the little bunny ears right, you know. And then
it was never quite right either.
It was always so bad, you know. So I remember that moment, but in terms of pop culture out of South Africa, I didn't know. I think we were watching so many international shows, and even music. In music, we were listening to a lot of international bands, more South African within the music scene because there was a big music scene in South Africa. But, you know, SABC1 was the TV channel, and it was, you know,
like
a
public
lot of
access
talking.
or something?
Yeah, it was like a lot of talking and a lot of commercials. So we watched all the other channels that became available. And when I say all the other, I mean the other 4.
So you didn't get MTV or?
Yeah, we got MTV at some point. We got MTV. My mom was super into MTV. And I did, for a minute, that's my only sense of pop culture came from, like, MTV.
Oh.
You know, that's where
All of us.
That's where I kind of started to fall in love with music artists. My mom was very much into music, but she was into, like, Neil Diamond and all that whole... So her ABBA and Neil Diamond...
Nothing wrong with that.
Used to play all the time. Oh, I think this is why it took me a minute to get myself musically acclimated. Was my mom loved to listen to music late through the night while I was trying to get some sleep. So, you know, I would hear like Wham or ABBA or whatever it was, the same song over and over and over. So I kind of skipped that. I was like, oh, I can't. If I hear that song once more, I'm going to die. Johnny Mathis, like, please, God, no. Sorry.
Well, no. So then why didn't you just rebel and then turn up the, you know, Guns N' Roses or some heavy metal? You could, give it back to her.
I don't know. I was like little goody two-shoes child. I was like, I have to study and I have to get some sleep because otherwise I'm going to have a horrible day tomorrow. Mom's like, whatever,
rocking
singing out in the living room.
Is your mom still
Bless
with
you,
us?
Mom.
I'm
No,
gonna
she's
go hang out
not.
with
And
her.
I'm
Oh,
just
I was
bless
going to
you, Mom. No,
say,
she's
I'll
not.
go hang out with her any day. So the Cosby Show was allowed. I really wanted to touch this because everything I learned about South Africa in growing up was through MTV. And, the Artists Against Apartheid and the song Free Nelson Mandela and the whole Mandela effect, thinking that he had died, was going on, too. It was one of those, rumors like... like Marilyn Manson took out his ribs and all, like those rumors that go around before we had the internet. So in your experience, do you feel like those were authentic representations for us to be learning in America, or was there just so much more behind the scenes that we didn't see?
It's I think everyone had their own sense of it in South Africa. In South Africa, remember, there's 7, I think at that point we had 11 different languages in one country, there's 11 different cultures in one country, there's 11 different cultural experiences all in the same kind of place, in the same space,
That's kind of cool.
And that was really cool. So it wasn't like, for me, apartheid and like I was so young and I was so in such a rural setting that I had no idea what it was. I had no idea what apartheid was. My family really didn't really see color in terms of race, in terms of finance, yes, but for me, a lot of my friends who were black lived on farms and they had great lives. They didn't go to school. They ran around in the rivers. We ran around together. Like at an early age, there was no definition of me. Well, I'm white and privileged, and this is a different world. We just did things either together or different, or in different ways. But there was no opinion about it. So there was no like, oh, look at that, or wow, they have a big house. Like no one did that, which I think was maybe misrepresented around the world because we weren't doing that in the country. Like I told you in our pre-interview, I went through school and yes, most of the kids at my school were white kids, but black kids were being welcomed into the school while I was just at high school, and then I got to university and had no sense of what apartheid was. And then my first girlfriend at the time was a mixed girl, and she a mixed race girl, and we used to hold hands and walk. And then one day she said to me, I was holding her hand and we were walking through campus at university, and she said to me, aren't you afraid someone might like come up and attack us or hit us? And I was like, why? Like I literally, there was the moment that the world
your innocence
crashed.
Your innocence
I
is shattered.
I never forget that moment because I looked in her eyes and I was like, wow.
You honestly didn't understand the question, right?
And then she said, I need to tell you a couple of things. And then she broke down apartheid for me, and I was like,
that's a thing?
where's this been happening? And she's like,
here.
Right here, on this campus. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And then I got on, and it was that was my beginning of my soapbox, because then I was like, that is not okay. I'm going to fight for this injustice for the rest of my life. And
you had said in your casting class that you really, you love to focus on giving people opportunities for auditions and diverse casts and whatnot. So you have held true to that. To this day.
It was that moment that I realized that not that I was going to have a political career, but that I was going to change some forms of narrative. And then fast forward into the film business, I get into the industry and I'm like, wait a minute. And working in South Africa in the film business was such a culture shock coming here, because in the film business there, all our crews were mixed, like crew. We took people who didn't know about filmmaking and trained them up, and they become some of the best crew in the world. So that process of leveraging the film industry to create job opportunities, it was all happening in South Africa. And then I arrive in Hollywood and I'm like, so there's something so wrong with this picture. You walk into a board meeting and you're like, great, where are all the people? Just asking for friends of mine, a lot of friends of mine, and became very vocal when I got here. Because then I got here and I'm like, wait, okay, all right, now I see what's been going on, And it was like suddenly, like now in the last couple of years, there's suddenly this like supply and demand kind of breakdown because historically the industry has been, to put it quite frankly, fucking up, and just hasn't. They've created this void that now they're trying to fill overnight. That
kind of quickly,
immediately.
Like now,
but the void was created over centuries. Like so it was from the birth of the studios, this void's been created. No, I'm never going to get.
So
hired
is it
again.
like a genuine like desire to fill it, or is it something that you feel that it's being done kind of superficially?
No, I think it's genuine now. I think that also coming from South Africa, that when apartheid ended, and then there was this mad scramble to also fix a problem,
to fix
historical problem,
like a PR cleanup.
When Black Lives Matter happened, I was like, this is not the first time I've been through this. I recognize this, and I know exactly what it is. And then the sudden desire to do the right thing overnight, and I'm like, well, we got to go back a little,
right? Contextualize it.
Yeah, you got to go back, and we got to really sit down and, the word of the day, unpack everything. But it is the only way to do it, because it's not a quick fix, and if it is a quick fix, it's going to tank, and then we're going to be back all the way back to square one. And I'm hell-bent on making sure that doesn't happen. Like I always talk about sustainability in terms of diversity and equity, is like, how do we sustain this? Like not just be like, oh, and now we're just going to like make this picture, like, because we've been doing that and it has not worked. So.
Well, clearly, I think there's definitely a void in just the entertainment value out there right now.
Sure.
I guess I'm just being cynical because I'm older, and we get nostalgic the older we get, but it's like they don't make films like they used to, and so being here at Chapman, I find a lot of it is business oriented and what's trending. And now we look a lot at analytics and what's already been done before. Let's just do more of that. How do you feel that you're trying to bring something new that's also still going to be profitable?
You know, it's interesting because 5 years ago, you know, it was all about banking the movie. Like, how are you going to get the financing? Who's going to which actor's going to help finance the movie? You know, and then I'm looking at the movies. Like, I've seen this wave. I think I luckily and just unintentionally caught this wave of change, where I came in and said, "But we should be doing this," and then everyone kind of woke up and was like, "Oh, Russell was like, yeah." I was pitching this.
You were ahead of the curve.
I was kind of pitching it like 8 to 10 years ago, and couldn't get a studio executive to look at me. Like, I was walking in and being, "I'm doing a training program for underprivileged communities or disadvantaged communities who want to get into casting, because the only way we get into casting is by knowing a lot of friends, which is the historical problem in history.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start putting systems in place that are going to change that." Couldn't get a meeting, and then of course, like 2 years ago, suddenly my phone's running off the hook. Hey, what is that thing you came in and met with us on 2 or 3 years ago? Remember you said something about training underrepresented communities, and I'm like, yeah, you know.
Welcome to the club.
Welcome to the
Yeah.
party, you know. So that's kind of, now that's exciting for me, you know, and I'm in a world now where a producer or client will come to me and say, like, "Find us new talent," and I'm like, music to my ears, man, because the working of lists is gone, you know, and it's we don't do that. What is a star? Like, who is a movie star these days?
Well, especially now after the last Academy Awards, people are talking about the death of the celebrity, and I'm welcoming that, because
when I got to the US 17 years ago and learned about list making and chasing stars to be in movies, and then the conversation became like, "Oh, it's the same people. Oh, why are we seeing the same people in movies?" And then TV opened up, and then these streaming opened up, and suddenly film actors were doing TV, and it all became kind of blurry. But the same list, like the Chris list, like, come on, there's the Chris list, and that was the Chris list, and then that was a Paramount camp, and then Universal tried to buy the Chris list, and I'm like, I always looked at it and was like, I know what I'm doing. It doesn't feel creative at all. Let's see what happens, And then slowly, as the stars that we knew kind of faded out, no one came in to take their place, and the ones that did were like overnight sensations, the kids from Twilight or whatever,
right.
And then they came and went in a heartbeat because of the whole reality world opened up, and then I saw it go away. I saw that star kind of structure just
well, is it
away.
The age of the attention span deficit? Because Harrison Ford, Michael Douglas, you're a star for decades, right. And now with the Instagram mentality, you have your 5 minutes of going viral and then you're gone, or you make a good movie and you're forgotten, or whatnot, or even streaming, your series may not even be picked up for another season.
Sure.
So
and it's also like, what are we talking to our kids about? Like, we don't like my mom was talking to me about Neil Diamond and all. She talked ABBA and like showing me Michael Jackson and showing me MTV. What are we showing our kids now in the music scene? I'm not like,
excited about anybody, yeah.
Hey, let me show you something. Her name's Britney Spears. Like, I don't even know who it would be. Like,
yeah, I'm kind of sad because like I would love to know who's cool and now, and I would go to bands now, but like what's the scene?
I have no idea.
It's just all these niche, and like every now and then I'll find a cool band, but like just by random chance online. It's not word of mouth. It's not like at Sam Goody you buy the CD.
I'm like Spotify. Hey, this is cool. Add to playlist. Spotify.
Yeah.
I haven't even looked at the artist. Like sometimes I'm like, whoa,
is there a concert?
This sounds like the same voice that I have 3 different songs for. And then I get on the phone and I'm like, look at the artist's name. But I'm not out actively searching an artist like we used to. Like we used to like I don't know. This is me. Like when that next top 40 album comes out, I'll be the first person to buy that CD.
Every Duran Duran album, I was
Madonna
first in line.
Something like we were like on a wait list for 6 years, and then it dropped.
The anticipation too of it coming out, the new album and you're so excited.
I have on my Spotify list now. I have like new weekly whatever. I'm like, what is this? Like I play it and I'm like, I'll just go back to my playlist I've created. Like we're not doing that, and if we're not doing that, then we're not talking about it in front of our kids. Then what experience are they getting? Like there's no introduction to that. I mean.
Well, and to me, like, so we're nostalgic. Are we going to be the last generation that's nostalgic? Because and I really want you to see that movie because he's talking about how we placed value on these objects, and it was part of who we were and our identity. And I remember I went to Orpheus Records in Georgetown in 1995, and I was looking for a song the Dream Academy sang that was on the Ferris Bueller's soundtrack, but there was never a soundtrack release. So I had to piecemeal each song from that movie on separate albums, and it was like the record existed in one record store in Washington, D.C. And I remember I literally went from New Mexico to Washington, D.C. to get this album. And I still have it, The Edge of Forever, when he's like saying goodbye to Sloane at the end, and they kiss, and then he has to run home before his parents get home. And it's like, it means something to me. And are the new generation going to look at me and like, oh, you're a sentimental old fool and you place value on things? And like,
I have no idea. I mean, we'll see. We'll see. It's funny because you sent me the "We Are the World," clip. Just last night, and I'd totally forgotten about that. And then
Hands Across America,
and then nostalgia, like, whoa, I remember that song, and it was such a moving time. Couldn't remember quite what was going on at the time, but now looking back on it, I can. But we were pretty nostalgic, and I feel like we vibed as kids at a little bit of a higher frequency, a little more sensitive,
Yeah.
Like growing up in South Africa, like one of the shocks coming to America is in South Africa, even till the moment I left 17 years ago, like we're such a social country. Like you go to a store and you're picking out some meat or whatever, and then some random stranger walks over and goes like, "Oh, how's the steak?" And I'm like, "Oh, I haven't had it before." And they're like, "Oh, you're having a braai, we call it in South Africa, barbecue here." And I'll be like, "Yeah, do you want to come?" And then 7 complete strangers came over to your house, and then we just had a party, Someone bought beers and then I came to the US, and I want to think that it's LA and the driving. I kind of bought into that myth when I got here, but that social element really doesn't exist.
It was so like that because I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and it was like, hey, let's go out on the mesa, have a beer, and you would invite people. So maybe it is now a thing of 2020, and maybe it was like that in our generation.
Yeah, and then I look at CJ, my oldest kid, who's so social, and he's like he's like a South African. He comes like I'll see him with all the parents outside school when I'm picking him up. And he's like telling them, okay, you're coming to my house on Friday. Genevieve, you can come to my house this afternoon. And then I'm like, are you clearing this with anyone? Like, does anyone know about this? And then, of course, the parents are like, well, we have plans, maybe after spring break. And then CJ is like literally making lists. Like he calls me while I'm in Mexico and he's like, Dad, I have to tell you, can you write this down? I'm like, but I'm in the middle of a casting session. And he's like, he just lists all his friends' names. And he's like, okay, make sure we're doing a party. Like, he's that guy. Are other kids his age doing that? To get that, he wants in, right? And then the parents of his friends are like, sure, we'll schedule that.
They're all flakes. Even now today, like I've been back in LA almost 2 years now, and I had old friends from when I lived here before I moved to Europe, and I still haven't seen them. And I know it's the pandemic or whatever, but it's always some excuse like, oh, it's such a long drive, or oh, and I'm like, I don't have kids, I'm single, I'm willing to drive to them, and it's still, oh, well, I don't have time. And it's like back in the day, it was like, true, let's hang out right now, let's go get a beer.
Like, yeah, we used to like I lived in this little town city called Durban, right? And then the drive to Johannesburg would probably
you said it was 2 or 3 hours.
No, I feel like it was more. But we would hear about a concert. We'd be like Saturday afternoon. We'd go out clubbing on the Friday night, and then we'd wake up around like noon on the Saturday, and then we'd be like, oh, did you hear so and so is playing? Like no one famous. Like so and so is playing. Should we go up to Joburg? And we'd be like, sure, who's coming? Jump in the car, 7 people, and we would drive 6 hours, watch a 1-hour concert, and drive 6 hours back or whatever it was. Like, we didn't even think about it.
No.
And we didn't even, our parents probably didn't even know we had done it. I remember taking my brother's truck the one time. I didn't know about mileage counters. And I remember just jumping in his truck while he was away one time and then doing this trip and then coming back and parking. Like I drew lines where the car had been parked and I lined it all up the truck.
Did you put it in neutral so your parents
wouldn't hear it? I looked at everything except mileage because I didn't know what mileage was. And I went and I made a note of the gas line. I made a note of exactly where the car was parked. Didn't know about mileage. Drove 6 hours there, 6 hours back, parked his car, filled up the gas. Perfect. He comes out and he goes, did you take my car over the weekend? And I was like,
what?
No. What would I have done with your car?
I was the worst liar my mom.
Terrible. And then and I think he was so impressed with everything. He just looked at me and said, okay. And then some years later, I was like looking at mileage, and I was like, Oh, hell,
Wait,
man.
did you ever tell him the truth or no?
Probably not.
Because there's a broken vase that my sister and I still...
Oh,
and if I piss her off and mom's in the room, she's like, I'm going to tell mom to this day. I'm like, no. Because she still probably would kill us if she knew about that vase. I'm not kidding. Like, we're still in trouble. Me and my
That's
sister.
so funny.
You didn't see Ferris Bueller's Day Off? Remember when they put it in reverse and they were trying to get the mileage back?
I did.
It is
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you freaked
yeah,
out.
I did.
You should have saw that and then figure out about mileage. Or I think there's a thing now you can do to like change it or something.
Oh, really? Good.
Yeah.
I'm going to show
Tell
my
your
kids.
Yeah. How old were you when you stole the car?
Oh, I just got my learner's permit, which in South Africa is 16.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I think.
So, like, yeah, I totally crashed my car in '93. We were doing Dukes of Hazzard jumps and to Carmina Burana. I don't know if you guys know that, like, Gregorian chant. We were in theater. We were so dramatic. Well, crashed it with like 7 people in the car. I'm just really lucky we're alive. This was up in the mountains in New Mexico. I was like you, out doing rural stuff. To this day, I'm not allowed to drive any of the family cars. I have to rent a car if I'm in town.
So not you again.
My mom will not let me near the car. And this was like 1993. So, and that was something that was really funny that a lot of Gen Xers talk about is that the boomers will like never look at us seriously. Like my aunt was saying, I'm voting for Mayor Bloomberg, because I don't trust you guys, because I was on Andrew Yang's gang. And I was like, you guys, we're in our 40s and 50s. Like, what do you mean we don't trust you guys? Yeah. I listen to heavy metal. I crashed the car once. And therefore...
It's funny because as parents that weren't hands-on, they got super stressed out when we got a bit older. I noticed that with my folks. Well, it's totally let me do whatever I wanted. And then, like, as I moved into the real world, it was like, so how are you going to make money? Like, how are you going to do this? And I'm like, dude, I haven't seen you for 25 years.
Yeah.
What's your name again? Oh, Dad. Cool. Nice to meet you. Don't worry about me. I've got it. Like, because we self-taught ourselves everything.
Yeah.
We self-taught about finance.
Yeah.
We self-taught ourselves about music. We self-taught ourselves
without YouTube tutorials. We had to figure it out.
Pretty much everything we were left to do on our own.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I think we are. We're a very self-sufficient generation. So I think you're going to instill that in your kids. It sounds like they're already, but they're going to have the heads up because I have the technology and the cool know-how.
Yeah,
so.
and I'm like, I want to give and be a parent that gives and takes. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like we also had the generation of, when in my day we used to walk through the snow for 10,000 miles. Like, that's my grandparents. That's my parents and my grandparents. Like, I did some of that, but it's not, I always looked at that as my parents' story, not mine.
Right.
So I'll never do that with my kids.
Well, we'll see. I'll hold you to that because you will. You'll be like, my day, we went to raves and we...
They'll be
partied,
like,
we
but the
6
thing
hour
is, they won't know
drive.
what it is, so they'll be like, "What is that?" And I'll be like, "Oh, don't worry about it. How's it going with Minecraft? What level are you on? Cool."
Well, I am so excited. I know you got a busy schedule, and this is actually a perfect time. It was a 45-minute. That's what we need for our podcast, and I am delighted and would love to have you back again sometime. And thank you so much, Russell,
Cool.
for taking the time and being a Gen Xer and representing. So again, this will be on YouTube and Spotify, and so excited to have you guys as part of the Zeitgeist Film Festival. Thank you, Russell.
Thank you for having me.